WWE parent TKO, their stock price falls after Vince McMahon files to sell $670 million worth of stock. This comes to us this morning, Friday, November 10th. And we haven't brought this up in a while. This is TKO Holdings. Great initial enthusiasm from investors here. Kind of drops after negotiations start for new TV deals. And just in the last few days, you can see the one day here, Friday morning, this news breaks, and they go from above 80 to closing slightly below 80. So that's expected when a big seller announces they're selling. That means, there's less demand for the stock. A big shareholder is trying to sell. You expect that. It'll be interesting to see what the buyers do and when Vince McMahon's sale actually goes through, if it needs to be staggered or if he's going to just dump $670 million worth of stock at one time. But it'll be interesting to see how investors respond. And if there are people who are glad Vince McMahon is selling, like, good. I've been waiting to get in on this new TKO group holding stock, and this is my chance since Vinnie Mac is driving the price down with his unloading of his shares.
Is he selling all of his shares or just a certain?
That's a good question. I don't know how many shares he really has. This comes from the Wall Street Journal, actually, which is behind the paywall, so I cannot tell you that. If any of you know this information in the comments, please tell us. Is Vince McMahon selling all of his stock, or does he have just so much stock that $670 million worth is just, we'll just get rid of a little bit. Just take a little off the top. Just a little off the top, just a little bit off the top, a little off the sides maybe. Leave most of it, just a little bit. Just a little bit. I gotta look good. Just a little bit off the top.
I feel like Vince at $670 million, that's a good percentage. I know that much.
That has to be right.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk about him being a billionaire. I don't know if that's true or not. Where his value, his amount of stock that he holds in the company would push him over, for the market cap of the stock would push him over $1 billion in wealth value. But yeah, I mean, 670 has to be. I mean, if 670 million is not a big chunk, then Vince McMahon has way more money than I thought, or way more wealth and assets than I thought. So there you go. We've got that little bit of TV deals. We talked about the CW a few weeks ago because the NWA signed a deal with them. NXT is also signing with the CW.
Wow.
The CW is crazy jumping into pro wrestling here.
Right.
Good for them for recognizing how hot pro wrestling is and what a really strong viewership property big time pro wrestling really is. What do you think of NXT leaving USA and going to the CW?
Well, is the CW, is that owned by USA or is it different?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think USA might be owned by Peacock, Universal, which is NBC. Yeah. I think CW might be owned by Paramount, which is CBS. Yeah. Don't hold me to it. There's so many conglomerates out there. It's one of them. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's Disney ABC.
Yeah.
It might be Paramount CBS.
This is really interesting because you have Fox, your SmackDown's leading Fox.
Yep.
And then you have 2 shows on USA. It was going to be, I thought it was going to be 3 shows on USA.
It looked like that.
NXT, and they're moving them to the CW. I wonder if USA was like, no, we want SmackDown, and we're going to pay for SmackDown, but we're not going to have 3 wrestling shows. So
okay.
Or the CW is interesting because they added the NWA and NXT. So yes. Like, are they going full? It's a huge wrestling channel now, like 2 different promotions they have.
And if NXT stays on Tuesdays, and NWA Power stays midweek as well. Do they just make a wrestling night out of it and run NWA Power and then NXT back to back?
Yeah, I don't know.
That might be fun. Apparently, this is a 5-year deal starting next for wrestling for WWE next season, which is October, which is exactly when SmackDown is making the switch to USA. So it looks like all these deals are for, if the deals are expiring this coming year, it looks like they're expiring for October. So that's going to be a tag in and out, you know.
Yeah, and that's pretty good. $20 to $25 million a year. That's a lot for NXT. And then makes me think, how much is NWA getting? Really? Like $10 million. If they were getting half of that, they'd be like, you know, wow, we're doing it. We're really doing the thing. They don't have a huge roster. They don't have all of the things amenities that the WWE has.
They say here NXT is aired, first time it is aired on broadcast television since it launched in 2012. A lot of big stars who are currently on the roster were developed in NXT. We've talked about on the women's side, for instance, the four horsewomen were part of NXT for a while. It was Charlotte Flair, Bayley, Sasha Banks, and Becky Lynch. Rhea Ripley was there. Asuka was there. Io Sky was there. On the men's side, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, all were there. This has been fun. NXT has been the developmental program that WWE wanted it to be. It has been successful. So this is a good score for NXT. Do we think this is a good score for the CW?
Oh, certainly. And
okay.
I would say it's
win-win.
It's a big score if for CW, if they continue the trend what they've been doing is bringing people from the main roster and bringing them down and having them wrestle in NXT.
Wouldn't that be one heck of a show on CW if, you know, John Cena and Paul Heyman were there like they did recently? What a great point. Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, and I mean, that would really be elevate that show a lot. I do still have a little bit of beef. It's in such a small arena, and half the arena it's all lit up because there's screens everywhere to pretend that there's people there.
Okay.
I would rather them do a little bit more effort and putting fans in the stands and getting at least a TNA size crowd. Come on, you know.
Studio wrestling. There's a place for studio wrestling, especially for your developmental, and maybe that's part of it because having a smaller arena makes your in-ring performers pay attention to the crowd. Maybe they're trying to simulate some of that indie feel because that could be good for people.
Yeah.
You know, we've noted that people who know how to play to the crowd, sometimes that's a real indie skill.
No,
and you develop that in smaller arenas. So maybe that's part of the developmental is, look, you're not supposed to be overwhelmed by the size of the crowd at this point. You're supposed to be able to interact with the crowd and play to the crowd as a character. And, you know, it's the training wheels equivalent, right? So we like this. I like this move. I'm with you, John, when you said really good for NXT, really good for the CW. This is going to be fun. That's all I got for you. It's cheap. It's heat. It's cheap heat.